Okay. Hello, everybody. Here we are again. 5 minutes after our last Mazecast. We decided to start Mazecasting more frequently. So you go after the last one. No, we just thought it might be interesting to have a discussion devoted entirely to the structure of the maze. Because often we focus our discussions kind of room level, and it's kind of nice to look at maze as a whole and talk about the interesting ways that Manson structured this. It's very frustrating for me that this is one of the things that he won't talk about.
Yeah, it does seem like this is something he could talk a fair amount about without giving up any like trade secrets or anything that would like betray the mystery of the book. This seems like these are fairly practical considerations.
Right.
I mean, it could be that there is some secret underlying structure that we don't know about. Like maybe he just based the maps on like some constellation or something, and it's like any structural purpose they serve is accidental. But I would guess that's not the case. Well, I mean, that might be the case also, but it's hard to imagine that there weren't practical reasons for designing the maze the way he did that it seems like he should be able to openly discuss. Right? They're things that we just know that he could just comment on.
Right, like we know what the structure of the maze is. That is not like a mystery apt. There's no hidden doors or anything as far as we know, apart from the obvious one. So it would be something interesting if he would talk about how he came to that. Regardless.
So maybe the most immediately obvious structural, I don't know if you want to call it an anomaly, but design decision to someone who's just going through maze but not necessarily mapping it out is the fact that the second half of the path is all closed off unless you find that secret door. Well, it's not all closed off, but it's mainly closed off. You can get to some of the rooms back there, but to make it to 45, you got to find that secret door. So some of the rooms on the back end are closed off. He didn't need to do that, even if he wanted to include a hidden door. I mean, he could have had routes to the end that just were not as direct and so didn't satisfy the 16-step path without cutting them off completely. I don't know. I would guess, well, one of two reasons or maybe both. Number one, that sort of serves as an impetus to look for a hidden door when you know that there are rooms that you just can't reach by any other means. Could have been a reason for doing it. It also probably lends more of an air of mystery to those rooms that you can't reach than if you were able to reach them, but you were just looking for the shortest path. Like at that point, your search does start to reduce to math. Instead of, being completely lost and just, confused and saying, how is it that I can't reach these doors?
Right. Yeah, I think it serves as a confirmer because your first job is to get to 45 and you know that. And if you're trying everything and you can't get there, that's different from if you can get there, but you did it in 16 steps.
What else?
Okay, well, let's talk about this nice infinity shape. Do you think that was intentional?
I don't know that it was. That infinity is particularly important here, but it certainly seems intentional that it was divided into two halves that bring you around to the same room and etc. So
Well, what about that infinity shape in room 29?
Oh, I think that's an 8.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just because there's a door to room 8 in there. It's just meant to mislead you, I think.
Mhm. So someone was asking the other day about these rooms that are not on the shortest path, but are included as part of the path. Maybe you want to talk about that a bit, just to.
Sure. I mean, this is something we've talked about on other map videos, but this is one-stop shopping, I guess. So, well, I mean, so the question is, well, these rooms are not part of the 16-step path. Why do you map them with them? And the reason for grouping the rooms in this way is not actually to do with the 16-step path. Like, not exactly coincidentally, but it just happens that this section of the maze consists almost entirely of the rooms along the 16-step path. But the reason why these grouped together is because you've this circuit of rooms, this set of rooms that you can travel. Once you leave this, you either go down to the trap from where you can never escape, or you go down to the loop where you can't get back to these rooms unless you return to one, essentially unless you start over. So the circuit of rooms is defined not really because it has to do with the contest solution, but just because how it's structurally separated from the other sections. That's why you've got 32 and 28 in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's a fair question to say, well, why? Okay, that's why we put it on here. Perspective. Why do that? Close to having
Right.
only the 16 path. Is it 16? That doesn't. It's actually, isn't it? Because rooms, right?
Four?
Rooms that are that. Like you came pretty close to it being only those 15 rooms. Why not maintain that for everything?
Right.
I guess there's an obvious answer, whereas it confuses things a little more if you've got some steps in between these rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, if the only options you had from these rooms were the correct door or you land in the trap or the loop,
Mm-hmm.
then once you figure out what's going on in the trap and the loop, then it's a lot easier to navigate your way through here.
Right.
That like it's some simple task. I think it's fairly simple to figure out what's going on in the trap and to remember those rooms, but realizing what's going on in the loop is, I think, relatively difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, you almost have to have mapped everything out to really figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes like our whole paradigm that we had in every room, just trying to figure out, oh, well, what are the door clues? It made it a lot more confusing to have those sort of in between rooms because it's like, oh, well, you could have come from here, and if you came from here, then you should go here, but if you came from the other way, you should go this way. So it just makes it a lot more ambiguous about which way you should go, because it depends on where you came from, which is not really the case anywhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This section, the path, was not the best choice, come to think of it. Maybe we should. I mean, it's served fine. Like, I'm not saying it causes major problems, but it does create that confusion for new people always as to why do we have these rooms on there that are not part of the 16-step path.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think it would be clearer if we just had like first level, second level, third level, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But these names are,
It's helpful.
I guess,
It's more helpful to have.
yeah, they're more descriptive. If we just
Mhm.
numbered them 1, 2, and 3, then it just starts to sound like jargon.
Right.
When you describe them as the path, the loop, and the trap, then you get some idea of what's going on there. So, loop doesn't have a lot of entrances, and the trap, as we were saying in the previous video, this seems to extend somebody's ability to wander around in the maze each particular time that they're making a run through the maze before they land in the trap. It gives them some more opportunity to just safely wander through some rooms. Um, it might help to obscure where exactly they've gone wrong. Whereas if they immediately came back to 1, or if they were immediately, if they just were funneled directly back into 1, then it would be clear that what they need to do is go back to 1. If they were surrounded by doors to the trap, then they would just land in the trap more quickly and learn what that was about. Um, so this it serves the general purpose of a maze, which is to allow people to get lost for a while.
Right.
Right.
There by technical difficulties.
Mhm. Well, we know what everyone knows what all the maps look like. They don't need any visuals.
Yes, because of your lovely maps, which you're.
Yeah, no one really heeded my cry there. Or I mean,
Cry out for redoing.
yeah, now that White Raven's maps are available anyway, I don't know that it really matters. Like, I don't think we need a third set of maps drawn. And anyway, Brent did draw more maps, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, they weren't really maps intended to help you navigate maps
Yeah.
in interesting ways. But yeah, that was pretty neat what he did.
So the question with the loop is why, in that set of outdoor rooms and the yards, they have doors to the trap there. And I mean, in a sense, anything that Manson does, we can describe what he does and then say it's a good thing that he did it. Like if he has doors to the trap, then it's like, well, that just puts, adds some stakes to it. It
Mhm.
it allows you to make a wrong step and to lose, and et cetera, et cetera. And if he doesn't have doors to the trap, then we say, well, this was a smart decision because it allows you to wander around and da 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 da. So, and I mean, there's a ready explanation for anything he did. There's always some balance between allowing people to die and allowing them to wander around. But I wonder why, in those rooms specifically, he's got so many routes to the trap, and then you step into the loop and there's so much space without any door to the trap. It really does make those seem like a separate part, like a separate section from the rest of the loop, especially since they're so readily accessible. I mean, you
Yeah.
can step to 21 right from door 1, and you can go from 21 right to 24.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, maybe that's like you're trying to get to the center of the maze, right? So, like, maybe being outside is a pretty clear clue that you are goal.
But you fucked up.
Yeah.
I said that you
Well,
fucked up. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that you would really That it may have been the intention, that you get so far away that you're actually outside the building. But you could easily imagine the maze having a courtyard or something in the middle of it.
Mm, yeah, it's true.
But I mean, that doesn't, the fact that it wouldn't a priori serve as a clue that you're on the wrong path doesn't mean that that wasn't Manson's purpose in making it that way. That may very well be why the section is like that, because you've gone far off the correct path there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, I guess in a sense, it's just maybe to have different kinds of runs to the maze. So you've got the potential of having the ultra short run, 1 to 21, 21 to 24, dead. Or 1 to 21, wander around there a little bit, dead. Or you can land in a loop and wander around for a good long time before you
and get
take on
over that.
Yeah. So, and that's good variation too. I mean, it would maybe not be good if every time they landed in the loop and wandered around forever before they landed in the trap either. I mean, that also just leads to them figuring out what's going on in the loop. I guess the idea is you kind of want them to vary where they end up while still having this sort of division.
Is about the structures or anything that you think is a mistake? Where was that?
It's hard to say. I mean, there's stuff that I wouldn't mind playing with, but everything works so well that it's hard to think of anything being like a clear mistake. The trap might be bigger than it needs to be, but on the other hand, I guess you want it big enough that people don't remember all the rooms in it.
Mm-hmm. Right, because you would think it was small enough that people would quickly that they're in a situation, but actually people end up going around and around for quite a while before they realize that.
Yeah, and people are also pretty bad about remembering room numbers.
Yeah.
Like we take it for granted. No, if you've been to the trap and you realize you can't escape, then you're just going to remember. Don't go to 22. Don't go to 38. Don't go to 40, 43, 6, 11. But in reality, when you watch people go through the maze, they'll go from like 30 to 34 and then be like, wait a minute, where did I come from?
Right. It's really hard just to remember a number. So like until you have that number in your mind associated with the picture of the room.
Which doesn't happen until a long time after you've been going through it.
That's a big number. It's things to keep in your head.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think you have to be making a deliberate effort to remember all the different rooms. If you've been to the same room enough times, you'll start to remember, okay, this goes to that room. But even if you remember which room connects to which room, you don't necessarily remember the door number associated with it. Like you might remember, all right, I know if I'm in 1 and I go through this door, it takes me to the devil room. So I'm going to go to 26, the devil room. But if you saw 26 in another context, you wouldn't necessarily remember what room 26 was. That's a bad example because there's no other door that leads to 26 of all of the examples I could have chosen. But in any case, even if you remember the connection between rooms, that doesn't mean you're going to remember the number and realize where another room connects to.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I'm probably wrong. The trap probably doesn't need to be smaller or have... you could try additional levels of trapping people, like have an outer ring that you can't escape from, and then an inner ring that you can't escape from. But that seems pointless too. Why not let people wander all around the trap once they're in the trap?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only reason you wouldn't is so that maybe they'll fall into the upper trap more often it's a trap.
Right.
But then, how many rooms do you want to dedicate to just trapping people?
Yeah. Well, and what's your position on the key shape of the trap?
Uh,
The key.
Skeptical.
Hmm. Even though you drew it like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly at the time I drew it, I thought it was legit.
Mhm.
It seems reasonable to me.
The broken key in 38 is like,
Yeah, but
I
again, that broken key is not shaped like this map is shaped. It's if this map is a key.
it's true.
That's just too dumb to countenance to think that he went to all that trouble to make the map look like a key, and then he's going to draw a key to reference it, and then he's like, whatever key, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. The key is the key. It also seems strange to me that he wouldn't have the inner room connections as depicted in the rooms form the shape of the key if the rooms were supposed to evoke that image. You know what I mean?
Oh, I do. I do. I do. So to have them spatially laid out so that if you worked it out, it would make that key shape.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really work. Hmm.
Baroque key.
What?
No, I said broke key. For some reason, I thought I'd suddenly stumbled upon a phrase that was going to mean something important.
Oh, anagram it.
Yeah.
We've already got an anagram in there. I think one's probably enough.
An anagram in that room?
In 38? See Abe knows.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that one. I forgot about
What,
the real solutions in the book.
what are the three things we actually know is good?
I didn't even think about that. I forgot about that poster. I'm just thinking about was she talking about the boot or you take the real stuff for granted.
No matter how, like, I know that's a broken key, but I still always see it as a butterfly and a gun.
Yeah, butterfly and the Uzi.
Yeah.
No, I looked at that for years and didn't get that it was a broken key until I think Lewis mentioned it.
Oh, Lewis got it, eh?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Lewis who first mentioned it. I could be wrong about that. But in case somebody mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, it is a broken key. I bet it's I bet that's not even meant to be tricky. Like he wasn't trying to be obscure with it.
No, I don't think so. I think that's just sort of like he should have made the handle part look more key like, like had white in the middle or something. Would have been
They're not.
obvious.
Do you think there are any structural mistakes or anything better that Manson could have done here?
Oh man. Be hard pressed to suggest any improvements or changes. That's for sure. Part of it is that it's just hard to imagine it any other way.
I wonder. It seems to me maybe it would have been an improvement if the only room that was blocked off by the hidden door was 45.
Yeah.
Maybe that had unforeseen problems, but I think the problem that leads to is that it essentially means that people are going to have a lot less experience with rooms like 23 and 32 and 28 that they only reach after they make it through there.
Mm-hmm.
Because typically when someone finds that hidden door once they've already explored a fair amount.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they then find the hidden door and then make it to 45, and then they're just trying to make their way back, well, they've got a pretty decent idea how to do it by then, I think.
Yeah.
So they're a lot less likely to spend time wandering around those extra rooms, which sort of, shortchanges them.
Do you think should be in rooms or more access? Like, you think it was a mistake to let people in at 8, 12, 39?
Wait, say that again. You cut out for a second.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that you think it's a shame that people don't really get to see 32, 28, 23 that much?
Right.
But then they have seen maybe 8, 12, 39. Those rooms, like I said, a good or a bad thing.
Oh, that they saw those? Like maybe it would have been better if all those rooms had been cut off.
Right.
That's not a bad point, because that would have given them, it would have been a lot less easy to find your way back then if those rooms were all a mystery over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see it going. I mean, there's a limit to how many rooms you want to cut off behind
Yeah.
the hidden door, I think. If you don't want to, just the more rooms that are inaccessible, the more people are going to be flipping through the book, going from page to page and seeing a room and being like, hey, I've never seen this room before. Why? I can't.
Right.
No, I kind of just, maybe it wasn't intended that way, but the way it plays out is that by the time you get to 45, you're on your way to being done with Maze.
Right.
At least finding the solution. I mean, if you're like us, you're not done for 20 years. But you're well past the midpoint of your solution.
Yeah. Not like you get to 45 and you still have half of the figuring out to go.
Yeah.
Like you really, most of the battle has been won at that point.
And I think that would be true even if you locked up the entire second half of the path there. Like you'd have some exploring to do, but by that point, when you fall into the trap, you're going to have a pretty good idea that you just fell into the trap. When you get to the loop, you're going to be like, oh, I've seen these rooms before.
Mm-hmm.
Although, since you're going back to 1, and since those rooms do lead to 1, I guess it wouldn't be immediately obvious that you were on the wrong path. It just would always take too many moves to get back to 1.
Right. Well,
but oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the crisscross through 4 adds a lot of confusion too, I think. Like just the fact that you can use rooms again and you don't necessarily know which be using again.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, I guess 26 you can't go back through there, but
no, you either have to go back through 20 or drop down to the loop, which seems like an attractive option. I mean, certainly when you get to 37, and then there's that little time loop connection with room 10. It's very attractive to think of that as being indicative of the path you're supposed to follow.
Right.
And it's only one step longer to get back to 1. So, if you're going a route, you're like, oh, 17 steps. Where do I need to cut out a step?
So close. Yeah, that's true, actually. It's pretty clever.
But I don't know. There may be some disadvantages I'm not thinking of to only cutting off 45. I mean, essentially, all you'd have to do is make 17 the room with the hidden door.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Well, and do something about 20.
Well, yeah, that doesn't actually solve the problem at all. You do that, but then you'd also have to permit some kind of access to those rooms, and not permit access back into 45.
Right.
From, yeah.
Right. And the
20.
problem here is that you don't want only one door going to 45 in the whole book, because then you just go backward. You just back solve and it's.
Well, that's true. They wouldn't be able to back solve because the door would be hidden, but they would either say, oh, there is no door to 45, it's a trick, and give up, or they would intuit that there must be a hidden door. Right. I mean, that is a, yeah, I guess it has to be that way.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming that Manson wants to maintain, which he does, and I think is valuable, the deception from room 23, where if you just look at it, it makes it seem like, right, that's the way you want to go to 45.
Yeah.
Whereas room 17 gives you the impression that that's not the way to go to 45.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to do that, you have to have multiple routes into 45, which means that you can't permit access to all those rooms without permitting access to 45. So if you want to keep 45 a mystery until they found the hidden door, you've got no option but to have some unreachable rooms, at least one unreachable room back there.
Yeah. So basically, like, he's made the two paths surrounding rooms, 18 and 23. One of them is the hidden door. And then the only other inaccessible ones are 32 and 28. And I assume he's just got to add a little confusion in there somehow. It's kind of fun in a way. Those two are inaccessible. I kind of like too. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got an emergency. I got to go.
Okay. We'll talk more later.
I guess that's all we had to say about the maps. That's all anyone could ever say.
Good night, everybody.
Night.